The study of human behavior has always fascinated philosophers, but it was only when psychology began to look beyond the invisible mind and into observable actions that it became a true science. Behaviorism emerged as the bridge between biology and psychology, a discipline that treats every gesture, reflex, and reaction as evidence of the hidden mechanisms shaping the human soul. Imagine the body as a symphony of systems, the nervous, muscular, and sensory, each performing in harmony. When one instrument is struck by external stimuli, the entire orchestra responds. This is not random, it is the body's coded language. Behavioral psychology began as an effort to decode that language, to read emotions, motives, and thoughts, not through mystical speculation, but through measurable reactions. It is here that psychology shed its theological cloak and stepped into the light of scientific inquiry, promising to make sense of the chaos within. What if, in observing others, we are really reading the mirrors of our own minds? Before behaviorism, psychology wandered through misty territories, realms of the soul, consciousness, and unseen spirits. For centuries, theologians and early thinkers treated human thought as divine mystery rather than measurable reality. Then came John B. Watson, who dared to drag psychology down from the heavens to the laboratory floor. He declared that only what can be seen, heard, or recorded deserves to be called science. Feelings, dreams, or intuition, he said, were unreliable ghosts. His radical stance angered many, but also ignited a revolution. Psychology began to focus on actions, not inner whispers, studying how external stimuli trigger measurable responses. Watson's approach stripped away philosophy's romantic haze, replacing it with precision and proof. This shift wasn't merely academic, it changed how humanity viewed itself. Were we truly free beings, or only biological machines reacting to the world's commands? The answer, Watson believed, lay not in prayer or poetry, but in the flick of an eye or the tightening of a fist. To explain his ideas, scholars often turn to stories, and one metaphor shines above all: the legend of Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, trapped within the palm of the Buddha. No matter how far he leapt, 10,000 leagues through clouds and storms, he could never escape that divine hand. So too, Watson claimed, is every human bound within the hand of stimulus and response. Each movement, word, or hesitation unfolds under the invisible guidance of this law. The Buddha's palm becomes the body's reflex arc, vast yet inescapable. Our impulses, from hunger to fear, operate like ancient scripts written into our nerves. Even rebellion follows its own stimulus, an urge triggered by frustration, by confinement, by the need to prove control. The image is poetic but chilling. Are we merely clever animals dancing on the nerve strings of existence? Yet, in understanding those strings, perhaps we also glimpse the possibility of mastering them. The first step to freedom, after all, begins with awareness. The body reveals its truths most clearly in moments of reflex. Picture yourself driving at night. A car approaches, its headlights blazing. Instantly, your pupils contract, not by choice, but by ancient design. Within a fraction of a second, vision narrows, and the world beyond becomes a tunnel of white glare. For that fleeting heartbeat, you are blind. This simple reaction exposes the essence of behavioral psychology. Every sensation, every motion, every instinct is a conversation between stimulus and response. Just as hunger makes the stomach contract, or thirst guides us toward water, every external impulse provokes a physical counterpoint. We are not detached observers of the world. We are participants in its endless rhythm of cause and effect. Even in sleep, our bodies remain alert to the whispers of stimuli, the rustle of danger, the chill of air, the sound of a name murmured in dreams. The body is the sentry that never sleeps, and the mind, perhaps, is only its echo. From birth, two forces shape every movement we make: instinct and learning. Some reactions come hardwired. A newborn's cry for warmth, the blink against sudden light, the racing pulse when startled. These are the body's ancient codes, inherited through generations of survival. Yet most of what defines us is learned, carved into habit through repetition. A child stumbles before learning to walk, babbles before forming words, and each success rewires the mind's circuitry. Behavioral psychology calls this the conditioned reflex, the sculpting of response through exposure and reward. Pavlov's dog salivated at the bell, not the food. Modern humans react the same way to messages, screens, and praise. It is training disguised as choice. Over time, the boundary between instinct and habit blurs, until even our deepest desires may be the sum of practiced responses. If so, where does genuine will begin? Or is freedom merely the illusion between two well-rehearsed reflexes? Every reaction exists for a purpose, to end the tension of a stimulus. Hunger drives us to eat. Thirst compels us to drink. Cold makes us seek shelter. Once the need is met, the body sighs back into balance. This principle, known as homeostasis, governs not only our physiology, but also our emotions. When imbalance strikes, the body rebels until stability returns. Consider the drunk who vomits after excess, a brutal yet protective reflex. The body itself demands correction. Behavioral psychology sees life as a constant cycle of stimulus and resolution, tension and release. It's an elegant system, mechanical, predictable, yet profoundly human. But here lies the paradox. The same forces that preserve us can also imprison us. We chase pleasure, flee pain, repeat patterns not because we choose to, but because equilibrium demands it. The question then emerges: are our comforts and addictions different faces of the same reflex? The endless search for calm after chaos? Vanity, too, is a kind of reflex, a dance between insecurity and affirmation. Picture someone pausing before a shop window, adjusting their collar, smoothing their hair, lost in their own reflection. To the casual observer, it's harmless habit. To a psychologist, it's a dialogue between the self and the self-image. When admiration from others fades, the mirror becomes a substitute audience. This behavior, known as narcissistic compensation, often conceals a trembling core, the fear of being unseen or insignificant. The more fragile the inner self, the louder the performance of perfection becomes. Modern culture rewards this loop. Likes, filters, and praise fuel the stimulus. Vanity delivers the response. Yet behind every polished reflection lies a question most dare not face. Do we truly love who we see, or only the version we've trained the world to approve? Perhaps the real courage is not in perfecting our image, but in standing before the mirror without disguise. To grasp how behaviorism took root, we must step back into the late 19th century, when science was shedding superstition like an old skin. In 1879, Wilhelm Wundt founded the first experimental psychology laboratory in Leipzig, Germany. A sacred moment when the human mind became something to be measured, not merely mused upon. For centuries, psychology had been chained to philosophy and theology, tangled in debates over soul and spirit. Wundt's method broke that spell. He treated perception, attention, and memory as phenomena that could be timed, observed, and graphed. Yet soon, younger minds grew restless. They found introspection, the act of looking within, unreliable and subjective. How could science depend on thoughts that vanished the instant they were spoken? Thus, the next generation, led by Watson and later Skinner, turned their gaze outward, to what people actually did, not what they claimed to feel. Behavior, they argued, was truth written in motion. Have you ever noticed how, on a nearly empty train, people still choose the aisle seat first? This simple habit reveals the invisible architecture of the human mind. Psychologists call it territorial behavior, the instinct to carve out personal space, a modern echo of our ancestors' need for safety. Each of us carries an invisible bubble that defines our comfort zone. Too close, and the body stiffens. Too far, and we feel isolation. Culture shapes its radius. A Southern European might stand closer in conversation than a Northern one, yet the underlying drive remains the same: protection of one's invisible borders. Even in the digital age, this reflex persists. Our social media profiles become extensions of that space, decorated and defended with the same intensity. The simple act of sitting by the aisle is more than convenience. It's an unconscious declaration. I exist. I control this small territory in a chaotic world. Across centuries, philosophers have debated whether reality lives inside or outside the mind. In ancient China, the thinker Wang Yangming proposed that the world and the heart were one. When I see the flower bloom, it blooms within me. His words captured the poetry of subjectivity, yet behaviorism struck at this illusion. How can science rest upon feelings that shift like light on water? The method of introspection, once revered, proved treacherous. Two observers could report different emotions under the same conditions, leaving no truth to verify. Behaviorism demanded a colder clarity: what can be seen, measured, and repeated. Still, the question lingers. By banishing the inner world, do we lose something essential? Perhaps objectivity grants precision, but costs us empathy. The flower may not bloom in the heart anymore, but in studying its growth, we risk forgetting why we looked at it in the first place. History offers striking examples of how behavior can be shaped through clever manipulation of reward and punishment. In ancient China, the reformer Shang Yang once erected a wooden pole at the city gate and promised gold to anyone who could move it to the opposite gate. Skeptical citizens hesitated until one man tried, and true to his word, Shang Yang rewarded him generously. With that simple act, he established trust, paving the way for sweeping reforms that transformed the state of Qin. Behaviorists would later see this as a perfect experiment. Stimulus, the reward, and response, the action, linked by reinforcement. What began as politics foreshadowed psychological law. Every society, from empires to corporations, relies on this invisible architecture of motivation. We praise, we punish, we condition. Yet beneath the systems and symbols lies the same question. Do we act out of belief or merely out of learned obedience to the golden pole before us? Anger, frustration, and exhaustion often search for an escape route. When direct confrontation feels dangerous, emotion disguises itself as gesture. A crumpled receipt, a slammed door, a heavy sigh, each becomes a small rebellion against pressure too vast to face. Psychologists call this displacement behavior, the redirection of inner turmoil toward harmless objects. It is the body's safety valve, preventing implosion by channeling force elsewhere. Yet this coping strategy has a quiet cost. The problem remains unsolved, only postponed. In a world that prizes composure, such hidden expressions become the language of the oppressed self, signals of distress uttered without words. Every torn paper, every clenched jaw, speaks of tension looking for air. The more we suppress, the more ingenious our mind becomes at finding substitutes. But what happens when there is nowhere left to transfer the weight? When the hand no longer reaches for the paper, but for another person instead? Even the calmest soul can erupt behind the wheel. Psychologists call it road rage. Yet beneath that fury lies something older: the defense of territory. When we drive, our vehicle becomes an extension of the self, an armored shell of autonomy. The honk behind us, the car cutting too close, they invade this fragile bubble, triggering the same primal surge that once made our ancestors bare their teeth at intruders. Adrenaline floods the bloodstream, vision narrows, judgment blurs. The civilized veneer cracks to reveal instinct. In that instant, the road transforms into a battlefield of dominance and defense. But awareness, too, can interrupt the cycle. The next time your hand grips the horn, pause. Realize it is not the stranger ahead you are fighting, but the invisible boundaries of your own control. The true victory is not to win the road. It is to master the storm within. In the end, behavioral psychology returns us to the body, that faithful machine of signals and responses, pulsing with the logic of life itself. Each heartbeat, gesture, and breath is data in motion, proof that our instincts and thoughts are never far apart. Modern research now maps these rhythms, brain waves oscillating with decisions, hormones rising and falling like tides of emotion. Physiology and psychology, once estranged, have reunited under the microscope. Yet the question remains, if every action is predictable, every emotion measurable, then what becomes of freedom? Perhaps freedom is not the absence of cause, but the awareness of it, the power to pause before reacting, to see the mechanism and choose differently. Between stimulus and response lies a small space, and in that space we build meaning. There, in the quiet hesitation before reflex, begins the fragile art of being human.